Start whenever you're ready. Hi everybody, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming out tonight, coming to Watchung Booksellers. I'm Catherine, I am the events director here, and we're so happy to have Vicky Bennison here with us tonight and Mark Rotella. And just want to thank you for your support of independent bookstores. We've been around 30 years as part of this community and able to host events like this because of people like you who keep coming. So we really appreciate your being here. Thank you. I'm going to read their quick bios and then let them go to it. Vicky Bennison is the creator of the highly successful Pasta Grannies. Pasta Grannies, I'm going to say it right, which is nearly 2 million has nearly 2 million followers across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Vicky's first book, based on its success, has been translated into 6 languages. It won a James Beard Award, the equivalent of the food Oscars in America, and for Best Single Subject in 2019. And the German translation was awarded silver medal by the prestigious Gastronomischen Akademik Deutschlands. Nice. Excuse me. Yeah, this is why you need Margot here. She speaks German. Okay. Vicky has made live TV appearances on The Rachel Ray Show in America and BBC Breakfast in the UK. And you may have heard her yesterday on Alison Stewart's All of It, which was fantastic.
That was good. That was really good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. She has been profiled in the New York Times, Financial Times, and Sunday Times, among many others. Disney Pixar asked Vicky to support the global launch of their animation Luca, love that movie, a story of friendship and shared love of pasta. When not traveling through Italy filming Grandmothers, Vicky likes gardening and spending time with her family and grandson Raph.
He's about 4.5.
Oh. And here, come on, Mark.
All right, I'll just jump over here.
And Mark Rotella is the director of the Joseph and Elda Coccia Institute for the Italian Experience in America and teaches in the creative writing program at Montclair State University. In addition, Mark also serves as thesis advisor in the MFA program at Columbia University. Mark's first book, Stolen Figs and Other Adventures in Calabria, recounts his travels to Calabria, the region in southern Italy from which his grandparents immigrated. His second book, Amore, the story of Italian-American song, tells of the era in American popular music during the mid-20th century, dominated by Italian-American singers such as Frank Sinatra, Harry Como, Dean Martin, my favorite, and Tony Bennett. He also wrote the introduction for the 2006 reissue of Carlo Levi's classic 1945 memoir, Christ Stopped at Eboli. Welcome, Vicky and Mark.
Can you all hear us, or should we use the microphone? You guys can hear us? If not, I'm told that when we speak, the disco ball goes on. So that could be a whole other thing right there. So, Vicky, thank you so much for coming and for joining. This is really exciting. I do have to point out that my mother's here as well, coming from Florida, and she's a granny in her own right, though she would cringe at my saying that. And while she herself is not Italian, she traces her ancestry. She's from Montreal, back to the original settlers of Acadia, and we bond on lobster, pate, and frog's legs, and especially escargot. So these are bonding things on my French side. Anyway, hi Mom. All right, so anyway, hello. I am thrilled to be talking with you. And so let's jump in. A lot of people know who you are, have turned out knowing who you are, and this is your second book.
Yes.
And the subtitle is Comfort. How can something be even more comforting than your first book? What is the new theme here?
Well, the impetus for the second book was the pandemic, because Pasta Grannies became even more popular. I had a 60% jump in viewing through the pandemic, and I had a whole host of people, dozens of people write into me, you know, weekly, saying how Pasta Grannies and spending time with the Signore really helped them cope with the pressures of the pandemic and the stresses that they were under. And even though the pandemic has receded for a bit, people still stop me in the street and say, "Oh, you saved my life. You know, I was under so much pressure." And being able to tune into Pasta Grannies is a real source of comfort to me. So although I wouldn't normally say comfort cooking, I think it is appropriate in this case. And the selection of recipes was less about trying to find all the different sort of pasta shapes around Italy. It was more about those things which were crowd pleasing. So there isn't just one lasagna, there's 4 lasagna recipes. Okay? Because everybody loves lasagna. And there are 1 or 2 pizza recipes, and there's some pie recipes, because you know, not all of Italy, and also risotto and arancini. Because you know, pasta isn't the only carbohydrate in northern Italy. There are others. And of course, 1 or 2 puddings as well. There's bunette from Piedmont, which is a beautiful chocolate pudding that is considered old-fashioned, which is completely unfair on that pudding. And tiramisu, of course, one version. I like the story with it.
Yeah,
so,
no, so you know, and you talk about that. So this was a kind of a YouTube sensation. You've got millions of followers, and I feel one thing that you really tapped into is that sense of comfort, of a familial comfort, of going back to not just the parents but to the grandparents, specifically grandmother, in these recipes. How, and I know your readers and your viewers will know the history, but for those who don't, how did a nice woman from London end up in the Marche region, and how did you start following these, like what was the inspiration for following and searching out these nonni?
Yeah, so I mean, it is still a passion project. I did not think, oh, this is a really good business opportunity, because it isn't. It is. I bought a house with my husband in Marche, which is 2.5 hours northeast of Rome. It's on the eastern side, the Adriatic side of Italy. And as part of the settling in process, I was looking at the local food cultures, and one of the things I noticed was that it was only older women who were making pasta by hand on a daily basis. And I thought, oh, I must make a record of that. And because pasta making is such a physical process, and because words don't capture the rhythm of how you make pasta, I picked up a video camera. And my background is, you know, in international development. I don't, you know, what am I doing? You can tell from the very first video, there's me with a video camera going, where's the button? You know, it's just, and now I have a cameraman. So, you know, in the beginning it was like filming my neighbor, filming the supermarket manager's granny, filming people in the area slowly. I mean, this wasn't a kind of daily thing that I was doing other stuff. So then you think, oh dear, I need to have to demonstrate an audience, and YouTube, you know, they can tell you exactly how many people have watched, how long they've watched for, and it's like, oh, I've got to take this more seriously. So gradually, to demonstrate that I had a big enough audience, you have to start taking it more seriously, filming it. And so I got my granny finder. So I have this amazing woman called Livia Di Giovanni. She lives in Faenza, because you need an Italian to seal the deal. You know, it's very easy to say no to a very polite English woman. And so Livia, nowadays, she, you know, we started slowly together. It was only, you know, a couple of times a year that she would come along when I needed her, but now she's my full-time wing woman. And she is in the business of finding women, and that means approaching families, because we don't lasso ladies off the pavement. Come and film, come and make me pasta. You kind of go through the mayor, you go through the you go through the sagra, organize the sagras, and you say, who do you recommend? And then you go to their family, and then they say, well, I don't know about that. Or maybe the families go, yeah, what a great idea, and the granny says, no way. You know, so there's and that's absolutely fine, you know. And then there are the women who say, yes, I'd really like to, you know, get involved, and they love the attention because they've been doing this for 80 odd years and being taken entirely for granted. So to have that kind of attention is fun, and they get in their Sunday best, and they go to the hairdressers, and you know, they take it seriously. We take it seriously. But because Livia is already talking to the family, it's not like strangers, complete strangers, invading your home, which is what we do. We turn up in someone's kitchen and go, you know, ciao, piacere, and then sort of like, can we move your table? Can I go open the curtains? And you know, so it's important at the same time that we have a conversation and we make them feel relaxed. And that's why we do it in their own kitchen. Because as soon as you put a granny into someone else's kitchen, they get a bit nervous. I mean, they have to defer to someone else about where things are and what they should be doing, because everyone's very diplomatic. And so we like to film them in their own kitchens. It's where they're most relaxed, it's where they're happiest, and so that's what we do. And so Livia's Rolodex is kind of bulging. We have 400 women, you know, that we continue to stay in touch with. And sometimes our ladies enjoy it so much that we go back to them several times. And so we have several episodes of these guys. Am I rabbiting on?
No, this is great. I love that you have a pasta yenta. And, you know, you have a pasta yenta who's like a matchmaker. And, you know, I totally get that. It's a family thing, you know, that you have an Italian woman who's approaching them to make it, you know, it's like you break the barriers.
Yes.
But the family gets involved. Let's talk about this. This is a family affair. And now, you had written that one thing you wanted to do is travel around and to film all the making of the various shapes of pasta. And we all know from cooking that how important shape is to the sauce or to everything. Like, you would not use a farfalle or orecchiette on your Sunday gravy. You would have a long noodle, but you would have it with a, say, a Genovese pesto. What did you find? Did you find that there were regional differences in the pasta making and the shapes? Maybe even a difference in ingredients, the wheat to egg to water, or sometimes in Florence maybe no egg, because this is what the priests took away from them. And then relationship to the sauce. Did you find any kind of continuity or lack?
Oh yes, it's very regional. I mean, it's a response to geography and climate. And what is grown. I mean, our grandmothers are the sort of masters of making do with what they have. And that's self-evident, really. But so in northern and central Italy, it's where mostly soft wheat is grown. The 00 is made from soft wheat flour. And so therefore, this flour is quite extendable. And if you don't, you can put water, which is what happened until actually after the Second World War, was that water was put in because eggs were too precious to put into pasta. They had to be sold. So if you were feeling very flush and you could afford to put an egg into a pasta dough, you would. And that egg puts more body into a pasta. And that kind of pasta is the one, as you all probably know, makes the tortellini and the tagliatelle and stuff like that. Further south, you have the durum wheat. Look, if you all know this, I'll stop. No. Okay. And the durum wheat makes a flour, semola and semola rimacinata, that is plastic but not elastic. And that means you can keep your pasta shapes when you make them, like the cavatelli di orecchiette, that kind of thing. And so it doesn't need, you can add an egg if you want, but it doesn't need it. It can hold its own, and they have enough body to make these different styles of pasta. Hence, you will also find pasta boards change throughout Italy, because in Emilia-Romagna, because you've got these, you can roll out your pasta dough to about a meter, as far as your arms can go. You need huge pasta boards. And actually, you don't need that down south. what you're doing is you need a little rim around your pasta board to stop your cavatelli from rolling away from you. So you'll have different pasta boards, different length rolling pins. And then you move on to all the food, and that's again a response to what is available in the orto, can they afford meat, all that kind of thing.
Wonderful. So, are you okay if we dip into some of the recipes now? Just a couple of them.
Yes.
I have them right here. I'm going to test you. This is the worst thing that an interviewee wants, is to be grilled about something in the book that they wrote 2 years ago and it's just now published. But I'm just gonna see right here how we'll pull it out. So we go to. So these are just a couple that jumped out for me from Liguria. The nettle taglione and the porcini sauce.
Chichi. Yeah.
Chichi is that the
Yeah, she's lovely.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. So
great.
this is the
She locked herself out recently, and she climbed up onto the window, and it's like her poor daughter. It's like, you did what? Anyway, sorry, an aside from Chichi.
I did.
So Chichi lives in the mountains of Liguria, and so again that's a response to, and she's the only person left in this village. It used to be 50 odd years ago a busy place. There would be villages all through the woodlands of the mountains behind Genova, and now she's the only one left. She wants to stay there, and so her poor daughter spends her entire time going up and down the mountain checking up on her because she won't move, you know. And so her recipe for tagliolini is like angel hair pasta.
Okay.
I mean, there's just she's calling it tagliarini, isn't it? It's slightly different
maybe
dialect.
yeah.
So she to make it green forages nettles. So that gives it the most beautiful colour, and you swap out about 40 grams of squeezed out boiled nettles for one of the eggs that you put through it. She's quite badly injured in one shoulder, so she actually nowadays uses a pasta machine to roll out her, and that's absolutely fine. If you've got machines, don't worry about it. So that's how, and then the actual sort of, the key thing for that is she adds a little bit of marjoram to her dough. And that marjoram is the most wonderful flavour. Sometimes you can add things to pasta dough and it doesn't actually make that much difference to the flavour, but marjoram is one of those sort of very clear herbal flavours that you can definitely taste in the dough. And the other thing that grows in abundance is porcini. So that is what goes with that sauce. So it is the most magical combination, and if all you can find is chestnut mushrooms, they're fine too.
I love chestnut mushrooms. Now, to be clear, the nettles is so it's boiled, and then is it ground or maciated, and then like then mixed in with the pasta,
So, I mean,
which gives it that bright green.
Yes, the chlorophyll in the nettles
Right, yeah.
is what gives the really lovely green colour, the sort of spring green colour that you get, and it's just a way of. It's just a variation. I mean, of making the most of what you have and providing variety. I mean, there wasn't much thought about, all the vitamin C that goes in the nettles or anything like that.
Right. So another one is calabrese, and one that just stuck out to me for me is the macaroni pasta with the Tropea onions. And this is right outside of Tropea. These onions are only grown within a kilometer. It's a very small region.
Very.
And they are it's a sweet onion, and anyone who's seen Stanley Tucci's show in Calabria talks about this. And my difficulty was trying to find a flavor that replicates that, that sweetness, to bring out the sweetness that we can't find in a red onion. But tell a little bit about the pasta, about the macaroni. And if I remember correctly, it's a thick. Just like you said, Calabria, it's a thick, not long.
Yes, so the macaroni you can roll by around a ferro, and so you create a little sort of sausage length of dough and place a ferro, a metal rod, which shouldn't be smooth, it should be square or rough or some kind. Place it along and then kind of do a quick whisk over it, not too hard, to create your macaroni. And so Elisabetta, who did that recipe, I mean, so Tropea onions have grown a very sandy soil, and actually the sweetness of it comes from later on in the season, when I think they've still got lots of sugars in the onion. So she's also using a dried pepper paste. So she's in Calabria, and you know the summers are so hot, you just core these special little peppers and dry them out in the sun, and then again mince them up, and you've got this very very tangy, very flavorful paste to add with your onions. So it's a terrific recipe. And the Turks do something similar, so you can buy it in jars if you can't find, if you're not about to make that yourself, which is probably very likely. Yeah.
Where can I get those jars?
Any Turkish Middle Eastern deli has these sort of pepper paste.
So here's all other cultures, and as we know, especially in the South Italy, Sicily, Calabria, which had been run by the African Muslims, French, the Normans, by so many cultures, so much of it has left their imprint there.
Yes, yes.
All right, so the next recipe, and then we're going to move on.
Stanley.
And Stanley, oh yes, exactly. So, and Stanley 2G offered his...
Stanley was following in my footsteps.
Yes, because you did this first. You did this, you wrote this first, and then he came out with the show. Yeah, exactly.
In fact, his production company rang me and said, "Can you help us?" And I went, "No." And he went, "Oh, please." And I went, "Oh, all right."
Oh, right. Oh, please. All right, so just one other recipe. This one is the spinach and beef pasta rolls, which to me look like little pinwheel sandwiches. Those little pinwheels.
Yeah, dollary.
What's that?
Well, they call dollary pasta.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
yeah,
And this is from your.
But this is a fairly modern thing. This is
Okay.
actually was invented by her sister just after the Second World War. But it is in the same tradition of Rotella and from Emilia-Romagna, and it's just kind of edged down into marque.
Right.
These sort of variations on rolling up your pasta rather than making them a lasagna. And it looks terrific.
Yeah, I noticed it.
Yes, and it's a visually stunning dish if you want to get ahead and prep it beforehand, and then, ta-da, something quite easy to do, when you've got a big party. That'd be good.
So I like how she said this is a relatively new form, post-war, which is, for the most part, when Americans were introduced to Neapolitan pizza. There were pizzerias before, but it was once the American soldiers came back from Naples,
Yes.
that pizza became pervasive throughout the United States. So I was like, it's a relatively new one, but it's still, nearly a century ago.
Well, some of the pasticce's been around since the 12th century. So
yes, exactly.
It's
Much
all
different.
relative.
Yes, exactly. Just a quick, and I know we're going to move to a Q&A quickly, so we can, soon, so we'll have that, and then we're going to go into signing. You have Q&A codes.
Yes.
So let's talk about, I just want to hold this up. This is something I have very rarely seen, only every once in a while. On each recipe, there's a QR, Q&A, that's what I'm doing. QR code.
Funny.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so
Thanks.
Brilliant.
I thought, the book speaks to the channel, so why not make it easy for you to look at what your recipe? Why not be inspired? Sometimes I can say something about rolling out the pasta, and you kind of go, ooh, what does that mean? And it's so much easier just to scan the QR code, and there you are. You're taken to the Signora. And so, you don't have to use it if you don't want to, but it's there.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Really brilliant.
So just one final question. I just kind of want to bring we've been talking about pasta specifics, regions, and I just want to talk a little bit on a TEDx talk that you did called Fettuccine and Feminism, which I think is really wonderful as we're talking about these grannies, these nonne, and what is it about, so let's talk about, I would like to hear what you say about fettuccine and feminism in Italy, and how you said these aren't just sweet, cute ladies, these are women who've worked hard throughout their lives and continue to do so.
Yes, I think they probably wouldn't regard themselves as feminists because they see themselves firmly within the family, and their role is as central to the family, and they were brought up to think of their most important role was as a mother. So I think it was Angelina, used to go with her friends and pray at the neighbouring saints for fertility so she could have as many children as possible. She's now a great-great-grandmother, so she's done very well. And, you know, so that she took it very seriously. This is what your value was bound up with the family. So, I mean, so the idea of feminism is around the fact that they have worked really hard within the home. They had no choice in the matter because they left school, I mean, boys and girls left school at 10. And women were girls were told at an early age, in most cases, that if you wanted to get married, which is what everybody aspired to do, you had to be able to make pasta to find a good husband. So they were given a little bit of pasta dough and told to play with it, and then you know, I had stories from women who said their father-in-law, their prospective father-in-law, would come along and look at them making pasta to see that they were a worthy wife to their sons. It's like, I mean, I personally would go and punch it. I mean, you know, I'd be walking out the door, but no, this was taken very seriously. And so these women are an example of resilience and endurance, and in the face of all that, good humor and generosity. And so it's about accessing their wisdom, really, even in a very small way around, you know, the pasta making is a vehicle for looking at their lives. And, you know, their daughters said, I don't want anything to do with that way of life, I'm going out to work. And now you're getting grandchildren, great-grandchildren saying, actually, I can do both. I can go out to work and make pasta. It's different though, because it's a hobby and it's a choice. So that kind of level of mastery will never be quite the same as what these women do, which is why it was important to film them.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. All right. I'd like to open it up to questions. I'm sure we have, you know, since before, we have a lot of Italians in this room, so there's got to be some comments, some shared stories, anything. Yes, in the back.
I just have a practical question from cooking classes. We always put the salt in before we added whatever pasta it was, just to enhance the flavor of it, and then we always rinsed it after it was boiled the right amount of minutes. Is this included there? Is it not going to get that same treat, like the same process?
Rinsing your pasta.
Yeah. So this is a question. So she was saying that, you know, you salt the water, you boil it, and I know you have thoughts on pasta preparation, like salt, water, but then you were saying that you were told to rinse it afterwards, which kind of gets rid of all the salt. And what I had heard when people used to do that was thinking that it would take the stickiness out of the pasta so it doesn't stick, when all you need to do is maybe add, if you're going to keep it, a little bit of olive oil. But I'll let you talk about that. So
The salt and the rinsing?
No. Well, I mean, you can if you want, but you don't need to. I mean, I've never seen anybody do that in Italy. So you add salt to the dough if you want to, because it's not necessary, it's a choice to the dough. Salt, a little bit of salt helps gluten strands slide over one and each other. So it makes it easier to roll out if you want. But the most important thing about rolling out pasta dough is letting it relax. You know, we say 30 minutes, but actually you can leave it a couple of hours and it's fine. I mean, the enemy of pasta dough is letting it dry out, so make sure it's covered, you know, in an airtight lid or with cling film or whatever it is that you want to use. The key to stopping pasta from cooking is to stir it. You don't need to add olive oil. It's a waste of olive oil. It goes down the sink. It's an expensive product. And also, what I've noticed, I mean, in some cases, I've found women who wouldn't rinse their pasta because water had to be got from a well and from a river and stuff. And you know, what you do is you drain your pasta into the sink and then use that water for rinsing dishes. So you wouldn't be adding lots of salt and things. And salt's also precious. Salt like sugar, used to be kept locked up. So, yeah. You may have had a different school, maybe it's a restaurant tradition that you've been taught, but it's not something that's done domestically in that way.
great, thank you.
And that's,
Yes.
What's the favorite story you've been able to tell?
My favourite? Oh, no, that's a mean question. That's a mean question.
We won't tell her.
Oh no.
So it's someone that like really touched you and why? That doesn't
so
have to be your favorite.
So in this book, I got to say, I mean, there are several that I adore and find every opportunity to go back to. One of them is Fenny, who lives on Procida. See if you can find Fenny. Oh yeah, she's got a great big red dress on. She's about 96, and the most beautiful woman who is full of extraordinary vitality, and she lives at the top of a set of very, very dangerous stairs. And she's still going up and down them. But she's the dress that she's wearing, she wore to America to see her relatives because she wanted to be seen at the airport. So there she is. And she helped her husband, and she's rocking it with a pair of trainers, trainers. And she helped her husband make woven handbags. So she was the one who made the linings. And when he died, she said, "I'm not making them anymore." So that's it. But she still kept some handbags. So that's Penny.
Yes.
If there were such a thing as a typical Italian household, would pasta be served as a preemie, like we see it on a restaurant menu, or would it be more typically served at lunch?
Yeah, so I think it's most typically, I mean, you can't really say typically Italian because of all the different regions. So I would say that pasta is most often served. I mean, you'll get kids coming home from school and they'll kind of put a tagliatelle on the table, and it might well be actually, I mean, grandmothers used to do it on a quick one and like that, but it's more likely to be packet pasta these days. But I'd say Sunday lunch. Also celebrations like weddings, christenings, Easter, all those have the more complicated pastas like the cappelletti and the lasagna. Those are the ones which are the sort of celebratory pastas that are only made several times a year.
Yes.
I just had a question about measurements. I have many recipes from my grandmother that have no measurements.
Yeah.
It's like wine, butter,
Yeah. Yes.
basil. And I remember once I was cooking with her, and my idea of a basil and her idea of basil was just like she had a bouquet and I had like 4 sprays. So I'm just curious if you could talk about measurements and if you experienced that with these ladies.
Oh yeah, no, so none of our ladies measure. So I mean, fortunately there are sort of rules of thumb with pasta making, so you can take it away and test it. And you can film something often enough and you can say that's 300 grams of flour, roughly, we'll go and test it. And we try and keep to what the ladies have cooked. Sometimes it hasn't actually worked in testing, so we've had to adjust it a little bit for whatever reason. But it's probably different flour, something like that. So it's a kind of oblique way. Yes, there's an abundance and a sort of intuitive way of cooking, which is great. And in fact, I would encourage you to feel that way as well. If you want to put a whole bunch of basil into it, then do that. It's your palate. But for those starting out, there is, the measurements. And I was worried you were going to say I use cups and I put measure.
I saw you like, oh no.
No, so I mean, if you can get a pair of metric scales, then they make your life much easier. But I agree that you may not want to. But.
You know, I remember Mom talking to Grandma Rotella, my dad, and I was asking her how much garlic she puts into a sauce, and she said, enough, but not too much. And I was like, okay, so. Yes, you had a question.
No, I was going to just reply to you. My father died, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I got inspired. I took all my mother's, who was still alive, all of her recipes, page here, page there. Oh my God, and I put them all together. We're from Calabria. and she had no measurements. And I went through, it was like a nightmare trying to figure out how to put this cookbook together for my family. But, and things were left out intentionally, I think.
You know, probably the secret ingredient was not put down.
Well, I was just going to say though, for you, though, you're talking a lot about these women, and I am, you know, I'm inspired by their food, but their stories. Like, do you have the stories? And, you know, did you ever think of putting the stories together?
Just stories.
Or something, they sound like very fascinating lives.
Yes, we put book one.
That part.
You can explain.
Okay, so
I love that part.
so Hardy Grant were very kind and let me put the stories in.
I saw the stories.
It's in the first one.
I'm
the
here
first one now.
second, so I didn't see
So
it.
the second book is actually they're incorporated into the book. So it's they kind of book design is a complicated thing about trying to sort of fit it all in. And so the green book has a looser design that allows more flow and more storytelling. So I'll give that.
And the bios in the center.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to Montclair. This is
An absolute pleasure.
so wonderful. I have a question about how your book is received in Italy. I assume that it's been, translated because I worked in Italy and lived there for many years, and my friends would always talk about their pastas, but rarely did they know how to make them. And even though they were appreciated them, the generation that was my generation maybe was a step away from it because they're at the university or working out in the world. So how is it conceived in Italy?
Yes, well, a lot of Italians watch Pasta Grannies. Fewer buy the book. So you won't find cookbooks in Italian kitchens. They're still learning from their grandmothers, or not. I mean, I think that was one of the things, is like, everybody knows their grandmother is the best cook, but in 20 years' time, what Granny is cooking is going to be different to what she's making now. And so that will have changed. I mean, so Granny now makes handmade pasta, but in 20 years' time, the new grandmothers, like your friends, won't know how to do that. They will probably go out and buy that pasta. So that was the sort of idea of keeping a record, so it's there for people who want to come and find it.
Did you feel that this might become a kind of dying art? Or is there enough common knowledge to be passed along?
I think people will be able to still make pasta as an easy thing to do. That level of mastery, I think, will become more and more rare in domestic situations. It is to an extent being professionalized. So if you're going to get really good at pasta, you're going to go out and earn a living from it, and you're going to be working in a pasta shop or a pastificio, or in a restaurant, something like that. That's how you will be the absolute master. It won't be women in the home.
Yes.
This was an observation. My daughter turned me on to Pasta Grannies. They all did everything with a paring knife. We have a million knives, but everything they did. Is that true? That they just used that little knife?
Yes. It makes me nervous every time I film it. They're kind of cutting into their hand, and I'm going, don't slip while I'm filming you. So yes, so I think that's one. These little, I call it the nonna knife because it's a sort of a term of affection. These little vegetable knives, and you can buy them at every market in Italy. They cost about €1. And they're easily replaceable. And if someone has a sharp knife in the house, it's the husband, because he'll be using it for hunting, the sort of butchery side of things. So I'm starting to see sort of, if women get really into the cooking, someone will have bought them a chef's knife for Christmas or something like that. So you will occasionally see a cooking knife, a proper one, but it is, I am afraid, the vegetable knife. And I think partly they don't want to put, so pasta boards must not have any other flavour on them, because it will pick it up. So they don't want to put an onion onto that board, so you're keeping that pasta board for your pasta and your vegetables, well, they can be cut on your hand. So That's what it is.
Yes.
Do you have to keep it refrigerated, like in our supermarkets? We have our fresh pastas in
Yeah.
the refrigerated section and then the dry pastas in the box.
So your pasta dough, when it's relaxing, can go into the fridge, but it's very important to bring it up to room temperature before you start rolling it. Otherwise, you're going to be having a really good workout on it. I mean, it can stay on outside for a couple of hours without any ill effect, unless you know. So, if you've made your pasta shape and you don't want to use that immediately, put it on a flat tray and put it in the freezer. Take it out and bag it and cook from frozen. I wouldn't keep fresh pasta in the fridge that's been ready formed.
You had a question?
Well, just a quick, what was the oldest granny that you interviewed?
Do you know, I know that I've interviewed.
Or do they tell their age?
They do. Funny enough, I know of a 104-year-old in Sicily, and I can't film her because her 82-year-old her 82-year-old daughter doesn't want her to do it, which is like, but the oldest that I have filmed is 101, and Rosina, she's not in the books actually, she's this year's, and she is quite extraordinary. She's so active. So yes, so yeah, it's keeping busy, keeps you young.
Shapes of pasta that you've seen. Just general shapes.
Oh well, I mean tagliatelle is the. Well,
So
we're talking
flat,
ham. So I'm talking ham. I'm talking fresh pasta, not farfalle. Well, that's actually all fresh pasta as well. But I mean, all the sort of bucatini can't be made without a gadget. It's usually industrially made.
Right.
So.
Right.
So, I mean, I think all the, the tagliatelles, there's a kind of maltagliate, which is the badly cut ones. It's the really fast, easy ones that and I've got a couple of Italians here. They can tell. What are the others? There's lasagna. Those are the sheets that can be made into it. I mean, fettuccine is just a different width of tagliatelle. So all those kind of ribbon pastas are probably the most popular ones.
Where we're from, usually it's the fusillis.
The which ones?
Fusilli.
Fusilli, yes.
It's with the spike,
yes,
with the spoke.
And the fusilli, yes. So the fusilli has about 20 different names, that same shape. Fusilli can be macaroni, it can be all sorts of names, but it's great. It's basically the one that's being formed as a little roll.
Anyone else?
Any special tricks?
Watch the grannies. I would say the most important thing you can do if you are going to make fresh pasta is rest the dough. And find the brand of flour that you like to use and stick with it, because because flours behave quite differently. You wouldn't expect it. You would expect it to be all homogeneous and pretty much the same, but it's not.
Is there a U.S. flour that's people use for good impact? They'll tell us a UK brand.
No, I think is it Crown Arthur?
King Arthur. That's what we all use anyway, yes.
Is that what you all use
Yes.
anyway? Everybody does that. I mean, there's that one. But I've noticed across America there are several small millers that are doing good things with flour. And if you do have a local miller, a local flour mill, support them, talk to them about the flours that they're producing. Because the grandmothers I film often say, when they were young, the flour smelt different. It had a perfume. It smelt, and it tasted nutty. And now we're just kind of getting a sort of a very bland, industrialized flour. So if you've got a local flour mill, go and find it. Yeah.
Right. So, thank you so much for talking with us. I also want to thank Catherine and Watchung Booksellers. They're like a good brand. There is very little that's as important as a local bookstore, so thank you for supporting it.
Yes.
Thank you for coming out. If just a couple things.